I will say that my wife and I also started doing that. Actually, pretty recently. We were really good for a long time about having zero technology at the table. I will say that my wife and I also started doing that. Actually, pretty recently, pretty recently, we were really good for a long time about having zero technology at home, at the table. But the iPad has somehow sneaked its way to the table, and we're like, should we watch a show? But the iPad had somehow sneaked its way to the table. But the iPad had somehow sneaked its way to the table. Sneaked its the way to the table. But the iPad had somehow sneaked its way to the table. 어느새 아이패드가 탁자 위에 올라와 있고 그러다 보면 우리는 드라마 볼까? 라고 하게 돼. But the iPad had somehow sneaked its way to the table and we're like, should we watch a show? That has somehow sneaked its way to the table. And then we started, but we don't do that all the time. But yeah, from time to time, we do it, and actually every Thursday we do that, to be specific, because there's one show that we'd like to watch together, comes out on Wednesday night, and so we watch it at dinner every Thursday, to be specific, because there's one show that we'd like to watch together, comes out on Wednesday night, and so we watch it at dinner every Thursday. So at least once a week we do that. And yeah, it's fun. I can't say there's anything wrong with it. Suzanne, I got one question here for you before we wrap up. Suzanne, I got one question here for you before we wrap up, and I don't know if you will have an answer for this or not. I don't know if you will have an answer for this or not. I don't know if you will have an answer for this or not, or if you want to share your answer about this question or not. 답이 있는지 아니면 공유하고 싶은지는 모르겠지만, and I don't know if you will have an answer for this or not, or if you want to share your answer about if you want to share your answer about this question or not. I don't know if you will have an answer for this or not, or if you want to share your answer about this question or not. But the question is, have you ever been in a situation where someone's table manners were so bad that it affected your enjoyment of the meal? But the question is, have you ever been in a situation? The question is, have you ever been in a situation where someone's table manner or someone's table manners were so bad that that affected your enjoyment of your meal? It affected your enjoyment of the meal. It affected your enjoyment of the meal. But the question is, have you ever been in that situation? Have you ever been in a situation where someone's table manners were so bad that it affected your enjoyment of the meal? Have you ever been in a situation? 그런 적 있어? Have you ever been in a situation? 그런 적 있어? Have you ever been in a situation? Have you ever been in a situation? Have you ever been in a situation where someone's table manners were so bad that it affected your enjoyment of the meal? Yeah. I would say there's two things that come to mind. There's two things that come to mind. Yeah. I would say there's two things that come to mind. Two things that come to mind. One was when I was on an airplane. So that's kind of a little bit difficult because you're flying, you're eating out of these little containers. It's not ideal to begin with. You're in a tight space. But one time, I was sitting in the middle seat. I was sitting in the middle seat. Olivier was on the end, and there was a gentleman next to me, and he was talking to his friend across the aisle, and he was putting his face literally over my food, like just talking across me and Olivier to his friend on the other side of the aisle, and didn't care that I was like, I'm eating here. Yeah. I would say there's two things that come to mind. One was when I was on an airplane, so that's kind of a little bit difficult because you're flying, you're eating out of these little containers. It's not ideal to begin with. You're in a tight space. But one time I was sitting in the middle seat. Olivier was on I was sitting in the middle seat. Olivier was on the end. 끝에 있었고. Olivier was on the end, and there was a gentleman next to me, and he was talking to his friend across the aisle, and he was putting his face literally over my food, like just talking across me and Olivier to his friend on the other side of the aisle, and didn't care that I was like, I'm eating here. Yeah, excuse me, like personal space. Excuse me, like personal space. So that was tough because you're kind of trapped. it's not like you can call the waitress over. You can. It's not like 그런 게 아니잖아. It's not like you can call the waitress over move to another table. It was like, okay, I'm stuck. Yeah, you got no outs in that situation. You got no outs in that situation. You just sort of have to deal with it. You just have to deal with it. You just sort of you just sort of have to deal with it. Yeah, so I had to just say, excuse me, sir, like, can you please stop? Or you can switch seats with him if you want to speak with your friend. Like, you can change your seat. We'd happy to switch. We'd happy to. I'd happy to. I'd happy to. We'd be happy to. We'd be happy to. We'd be happy to switch. You know, it was quite rude. So that was one, and another one was we were hosting friends at the time. We were hosting friends at the time. Needless to say, they are not really friends of ours anymore. 문제는 친구 아닌데. Needless to say, they are not really friends of ours. 우리 친구가 아니야. Friends of ours. 우리 친구가 아니야. They are not really friends of ours anymore. They are not friends of ours anymore. They are not really friends of ours anymore. But at the time, we had friends over for dinner. We had friends over for dinner. A few couples. And one of the guys between dinner and dessert just put his foot up on the table. Just put his foot up on the table. His bare foot just up on the table. On the kitchen table, the dining table. Yeah, so we only have like one large dining table, and we were all sitting around the table, and we're digesting between dinner and dessert, and he just put his foot. I was gonna say like as if it was his house, but to be I was gonna say, and he just put his foot. I was gonna say like as if it was his house, but to be honest, I wouldn't do that. And he just put his foot. I was gonna say 말할 거였어. As if it was his house, but to be honest, I wouldn't do that in my own house. It was almost like he was alone watching Netflix, and he just put his foot on the table. Wow. I was like, oh my gosh, you're at somebody's house who just cooked you dinner. We're waiting for dessert. what are you doing? Like nobody wants to smell your feet. That is really interesting because I feel like that is just a no. Probably everywhere. That's like a globally kind of accepted thing that you want to try and put the kitchen table. Yeah, that's really interesting because I feel like that is just a no. Probably everywhere. That's like a globally kind of accepted thing that you want to try and keep the kitchen table. That's like a globally kind of accepted thing that you want to try and keep the kitchen table. 키로고 이렇게 해야 되나? The dining table as clean as possible, and after you're walking around and then putting your feet on the table is like, yeah, wow. How did you how did your guests react? How did your guests react? I don't know. I mean, girl his girlfriend, well, now it's his wife, seemed to be okay with it. I don't know. I mean, his girlfriend, well, now it's his wife, seemed to be okay with it. And then there were two other people there that's kind of looked around at me. But everyone knew each other well, so I don't know if they were like, well, that's just him. You know, maybe they know that that's his personality. Everyone knew each other well, so I don't know if they were like, well, that's just him. You know, maybe they know that that's his personality. Maybe they know that's his personality, personality. But for me, I was really offended. Yeah, I would be mortified in the situation. Mortified, mortified. Yeah, I would be mortified in the situation. Mortified. I don't know how I would react. That's wild. That's mu- that's a much more extreme story that I was expecting to hear, but it made me laugh. So I have to thank you for that. Yeah, I won't mention his name. I won't mention his name in case he's listening. We've decided to keep the conversation going for just a little bit longer here for all of our members, just as a way to say thanks to all of you for supporting us. So Suzanne, I've prepared three rapid fire style questions for us to talk about here that are all related to table manners. And the first question, Suzanne, is have you ever been in a situation where maybe it's like a fancy dinner at a restaurant and they give you lots of different cutlery or utensils and you're not sure about how to use them or which one to use or in which order to use them. They give you lots of different cutlery or utensils and you're not sure, 잘 모른다. You're not sure about how to use them or which one to use. 어떤 거 사용해야 할지? Which one to use or in which order to use them. 이건 또 인이 붙었네. In order이라고 하는 건가? Which order to use them. In which order to use them. Have you ever run into that situation? Have you ever run into that situation? Have you ever run into that situation? Have you ever been in a situation? Have you ever been in a situation? Have you ever run into that situation? Have you ever run into that situation? Have you ever been in a situation? Have you ever been in a situation? Have you ever been in a situation? For the most part, the basic two forks. 대부분은 For the most part, the basic two forks, spoon, knife, and like little spoon on top, which that I can pretty much figure out. I do recall like a small fork that's like really tiny that I was like, I don't know what this is for. I don't think I ever learned what it was for. I don't know where I was. It might have even been at a hotel, like at a British inspired high tea, and there was a small fork. It may have been for a jam. I honestly don't know. I never used it. It just sat there. It just sat there. And I kind of just looked around and was like, oh, well, I guess I will just ignore it. Not recently, but up until like maybe 3 or 4 years ago. But up until like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, was never that big of a seafood person. But that's changed. I've got into seafood in a big way over the last 4 or 5 years. But before that, I wasn't, and I remember. Well, not recently, but up until like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, was never that big of a seafood person. But that's changed. I've got into seafood in a big way over the last 4 or 5 years. But before that, I wasn't. 하지만 그전에는 아니었어. And I remember one of the first times that I ate lobster. I remember one of the first times that I ate lobster. but before that I wasn't. I remember one of the first times I ate lobster. One of the first times that I ate lobster. I didn't really understand what all the utensils were for. Like I had it here in Korea, and I think actually I've never had lobster outside of Korea, so I don't know if it's the same in North America. So I don't know if it's the same in North America, but they gave me scissors and they gave me this big stick, like this big poking stick, and I had to ask my wife for help. I was like, what am I supposed to do with the scissors and the poking stick? But actually, it seemed like a really efficient. It seemed like a really efficient way to eat the lobster. Like you just use the scissors to cut the shell, and then there's this stick so that there's and then there's this stick so that you can poke the lobster meat out of the shell, so that you can poke the lobster meat out of the shell. But that was a situation where I really felt that was a situation where I really felt to use another seafood kind of metaphor here, like a fish out of water. Like a fish out of water. I didn't know what to do, and I had to ask my wife to show me the I had to ask my wife to show me the ropes because I just didn't get it. And I have a question when we were talking about mass eater. Did you wear a lobster beep? I think I did. Yeah, actually it's really common also here in Korea for many restaurants to give you like a little beep. So, because I'm one of those people who tend to drop food more often than I would like. I'm because I'm one of those people who tend to drop food. 음식을 흘리는 사람 중에 한 명이야. Tend to drop food. Drop food. I'm one of those people who tend to drop food more often than I would like. 생각보다 음식을 좀 많이 흘리는 사람이다. I'm one of those people who tend to drop food more often than I would like. More often. I pretty much always wear the beef just to be safe. 혹시 모르니까 그래서 앞치마를 항상 해. I pretty much always wear the beef. I pretty much always wear the beef just to be safe. 혹시 모르니까. Yeah, that's great. Okay, rapid fire question number 2. Do you think it's necessary to have good table manners in informal settings, such as at home with family or with close friends? Is it okay to drop the formality a little bit and just go wild, or should you have good table manners all the time? I think you can really relax your table manners at home and not be so formal. But I think it could also be important to have a comfortability with maybe the roommates you live with, or maybe your partner or friends, so that you aren't in any way, well, let's put it this way. let's put it this way. You're not like putting your foot up on the table, right? You're not offending. Offending. You're not offending. You're not offending. You kind of maybe have the same level of comfortability and can enjoy a meal together with feeling like you have to be formal or that you feel grossed out or offended. So I think it's good to kind of be yourself in those situations. That's kind of how I live by, I guess. Yeah, I think the thing is, if you are hanging out with your family or close friends and you are doing something that bothers them, they are going to definitely tell you right away, like, hey, that's gross. Like, cut that out, right? You can sort of easily find where the limits are in that kind of situation. And definitely I think this is just natural. Everybody is a little bit looser when they're around their good friends. And you know, if I'm hanging out with my buddies and we're eating pizza, I'm probably like laughing and joking around and not worrying about eating with my mouth closed as much as I would be around practically everybody else in different situations. So there's, yeah, definitely a little bit of flexibility depending on your environment and context. Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's do our final rapid fire question here. And I guess, Suzanne, you already actually answered this earlier. And the question is, how do you handle situations when someone at the table is not following proper etiquette or table manners? Do you say something or do you ignore it? And yeah, I think we know that you are someone who would just voice your opinion and say, excuse me, could you not do that? Yeah, I even have a good friend who is like one of my best friends, and they do talk with their mouths full, and they, I don't think that they realize it. I don't think that they realize in a way it's something subconscious. They're just talkers, talkers. They love to talk and they continue doing it. Oh, they love to talk. They love to talk and they continue doing it even while they are eating. And I have to say things to them all the time. I say, hey, you're talking with your mouth full. But I'm kind of in that second rapid fire question. I'm a very close friend, so I feel very comfortable telling them, you're kind of spitting your food out. Can you just finish eating? Can you just finish eating? It's cool. And they usually are like, oh my gosh, sorry. So, sorry. Sorry. So I think if you feel comfortable with those close friends, it may be a little bit easier to tell them than if it's just an acquaintance or someone you've just met. That might be a little bit more difficult unless it's very overt and they are putting their feet on your table. I feel like that's definitely something you can say, yeah, can you please put your foot down? Thanks, you're not 5 years old. I think I've never actually been in in the situation where I've felt compelled to say something. Not that I not that I would be against it, but I just haven't been in that situation. But I think if somebody really pushed the limits about what is acceptable or unacceptable, then yeah, I would I would say something. And if and of course, when you're with your close friends, yeah, you can say like, "Hey, stop chewing those potato chips so loud. Stop chewing those potato chips so loud. Hey, stop chewing. Stop chewing." 좀 쩝쩝대면서 먹지 좀 마. Hey, stop chewing those potato chips so loud. Stop chewing them so loud. Stop chewing those potato chips so loud. Stop chewing those potato chips so loud. Stop chewing them so loud. It's annoying, but to strangers, it's harder, right? Thankfully, I've never really been in that situation where somebody's annoyed me to the point where I have to say something. Well, Suzanne, that will bring us to the end of this bonus content. I want to thank everyone for listening and great job on completing an English study session here with Suzanne and I today. Yeah, and now we'd like to throw things over to you. You've you've heard what Andrew and I have to say about table manners, but we'd like to know what you think. So share your opinion with us and the Culips community by leaving a comment on our website, culips.com. Don't be shy. Andrew and I can't wait to hear from you. That's right. Okay, everyone, take care and we'll talk to you next time.